I have a message I want to get out to people who believe in evolution and atheism in general. They want to reject Christianity outright, and you want to think that Christians are stupid just because they reject evolution. Before I could ever be convinced macroevolution is even possible, somebody would need to be able to explain to me how clearly designed things happened accidentally.
Well, that's a little fallacious now, isn't it? As evolution does not touch upon the clearly designed at all. Rather, it touches on the origins of biological diversity, i.e. how all occurring organic life came to be. Also, we don't think Christians are stupid because they reject evolution, as not all Christians reject science, and not all those that do are Christian. We find the opinions held by those that reject evolution and the surrounding science uneducated regardless of their religious belief. That has little to do with Christianity intrinsically, beyond the account of Genesis, but if people want to say it's not literal, then more power to them. But I just wish they would see how it challenges the authority of the rest of the Bible, but a whole other topic. Also, the evolutionary process is not random in any colloquial sense. It occurs via the repeating patterns built over time via small natural equations that to us appear random, but they really just exist at the level of chaos. You see, chaos leads to order, quite intrinsically, as all order actually is the repetition of chaos to a point that you can predict things. I am, however, looking forward to seeing more of your understanding of both evolution and biology, as well as what being an atheist is. I am certain that you, unlike so many before you, shall avoid repeating the same mantra of irreducible complexity that has been refuted to no end over the past couple of centuries. Oh, and so-called macroevolution is possible through the exact same mechanisms as microevolution. Acknowledging one as possible does so for the other. The only difference is timescale, and that's all. So just noting that fact as well.
Now, primary example of irreducible complexity that I don't see how you can explain away through any kind of natural selection is the way an owl's eye works. First of all, owl eyes have to be very large. Proportionally speaking, if our eyes were the size of owl eyes, they'd be about as big as grapefruits. Also, our eyes are spherical like most eyes. I'm not an expert on eyes, but I know that most eyes are spherical. Owl eyes are more cylindrical, and they work like binoculars. Because they work like binoculars, they can't focus up close, and they need to be held in place by special bones. So the eye socket itself has to have special bones that prevent the eye from moving. Whereas we look around, you're like, look around. They can't do that. They move their head. And for that reason, they need specialized bones in their neck. And they need specialized muscles in their neck so that they can turn their head 270 degrees. That's why they need that special stuff, whereas we don't because our eyes work differently.
Which works fine for the owls, but not for us. If it did, then our eye shape may have evolved differently. Fact is that this is in no way special to the owl, as many animals have different eye shapes, and the human eye shape is far from universal. Yet within birds alone we see a vast range of eye shapes. Just compare the eye of a swan, which is sort of like a half sphere, to that of a hawk, to that of an owl, and you will see how evolution can clearly explain for this. We almost have the intermediate steps from the different branches of the evolutionary tree of birds. As for the bones in the eye, it's actually more unusual to lack them. Sclerotic rings, i.e. the circular bone structures in the eye, are near universal in fish and amphibians, as well as common in both reptiles and birds. The notable examples of vertebrates that lack these features are crocodilians, some snakes, and mammals. Now, I don't know if you knew this, an owl is none of those things. Ergo, the existence of these sclerotic rings is less than surprising, especially when considering that they are also found in the skeletal remains of their ancestors i.e. the dinosaurs. They're just rarely put on display due to how poorly they preserve and how delicate they are when they do. Fact is that the bones for the owls have just evolved in a very slight manner to achieve their present form, so there's really no mystery there. The same goes for the neck. I mean, most necks have the ability to turn, therefore the ability to turn further is not mystical in any way. I mean, necks that turn slightly more end up being better. So how is that a mystery? We can look again at birds that exist today and find that some have slightly better or worse neck rotation thanks to slight variations in their bone and muscle structure. So this goes against what you are arguing, as yes, it's actually very easy to see how these things could have evolved.
On top of that, most animals that can see at night have a lot of rods in their eyes. And most animals that can see well in the day have a lot of cones in their eyes. But you typically don't see something that sees well both in day and night. Owls are different. They have a special mechanism that works kind of like sunglasses, independent in either eye. So they can shade each eye independent based on the environment. And they also have a lot of rods and a lot of cones. So they can see well at night, and then in the daytime when their eyes are getting washed with too much sunlight, they can do like a sunglasses effect to basically make it so they can see just fine during the day without getting their eye washed out by the excessive sunlight. That is, as far as I know, a unique aspect of owl eyes.
Sadly, like before, you are wrong again. The nictitating membrane of owls has evolved to assist them in seeing during the day. Yet, nictitating membranes are found even more widespread than sclerotic rings, existing not just in fish, amphibians, reptiles, including crocodilians, countless birds, yet also several mammal species, including dogs and cats. Even humans have the vestigial remains of these third eyelids on the inner corners of their eyes, but it is named the plica semilunaris and ranges in size from person to person. Now, various animals have adapted this rather common feature via natural selection to help keep water and sand out, protect the eye when attacking prey, and even keep out the sun's harmful UV rays. All it is in the case of the owl is a slightly darker membrane that allows for less of the sun's light to travel through and damage the eye. Too dark and it'd be no advantage over the eyelid, as it couldn't see during the day. Too light and its eye takes damage in direct sunlight. The better gauge the membrane to the environment, the better the sight of the owl remains, ensuring it can see better at night and day to catch prey and avoid predation. The better question is, why on earth do we still have the vestigial nictitating membranes? Where is the smart design in that? I mean, think of the possibilities. Think of all that a gay porn star could do with the ability to keep their eyes on the balls whilst not having to fear the money shot. Why does God give owls all the cool stuff?
All of these features of owl eyes are unique to owls. You can't find an eye that works anything remotely close to an owl's eye between owls and anything else. Because if you take any of these characteristics of owl eyes and remove them, the eyes don't work anymore. So you need all of these things. It's irreducible complexity, and there's so much complexity and so many unique pieces that need to all be in place in order for the eye to work. It's really irrational to conclude that that happened by accident.
Well, only if you believe that segment of misinformation you gave just there. Again, look at the swan eye, the red hawk eye, and the owl eye. Now, this is not the evolutionary lineage of the owl, but it does display how your claim that the eye needs to be at either end of the scale is wrong, as we still have birds with eyes that share features of both in the middle. As for the colour and light sensitivity of the owl eye, the ratios gradually got better as the nictitating membranes got darker. The neck thing is also less than magical, as an owl does not need its head to turn around as far as it does. Why? It's not a stationary turret installation. It could turn around. Yes, some energy is wasted, enough to make the difference over generations to allow birds with the ability to turn their heads further to do better. Everything you have just claimed as unexplainable by evolution, and is therefore irreducible, is very easily explained. I mean, this isn't even that hard to do. Just a few simple searches, some basic understanding of biology, and your complaint is answered.
My second question to anyone who wants to think that this happened by itself is that people will walk into a factory. I walk into factories all the time. With my line of work, I write software that automates factories, or specifically assembly lines and things. People walk into a factory, and I've never heard anyone even conclude remotely, like jokingly, look at all this factory that created itself. Yet one human cell, or actually one cell of any type, is far more complex than any factory on the planet. So you can walk into a factory and say, wow, this is amazing what they can do, and they make all these products or whatever. And there's factories where there's raw materials coming in, they get processed into other raw materials, and then they get manufactured into goods, and they go out as goods out the other side of the plant. We have plants like that, obviously made by man, also not even remotely as complex as a single cell. Why is it that you can conclude that a cell created itself with all that complexity, all that obvious design, all that digital software in the form of DNA, yet you look at a factory and you say, isn't this a neat thing that somebody came up with to automate this process?
This is actually rather simple. The evolution of early cellular life. What we see today in a cell is nothing like what the first cell actually looked like, as if it did, it would be instantly consumed by more advanced cells today. But during the first days of life, there was no such cellular predation, ergo, cells could gradually build in complexity over untold generations thanks to their rapid reproductive cycle. This was a mystery that Charles Darwin solved himself whilst he was alive in his letter discussing the warm little pond. You are, however, pitting 3 centuries of real scientific fervour up against 3.8 billion years of natural processes. What's more is that we are catching up. Robotic eyes, synthetic organs, and even nanobots are surging ahead in a way that may even allow us to conquer death itself. Now, your analogy is also fallacious, as a factory is defined as being artificial. This is the house/cave fallacy. Shelter is not defined as man-made, yet a house is. Often creationists utilize the same scenario as you and your factory, yet with a house, and ask how we could believe that said house came into existence. Fact is, a house contains materials we know do not occur naturally. If the question was about other shelter, e.g. caves, the argument loses its potency. Now, the materials needed for cellular life exist naturally, and we're on our way to creating protocells. At which point, by the way, we've gone from discussing evolution to abiogenesis, aka the chemical origins of life, which is another field of science completely making major advances each year and is homing in on the conditions responsible for the formation of the original cell. So, yeah.
Another question that I think you'll have a hard time answering, or just a general observation that I think your worldview will reject, is how there are so many extremely specific prophecies in the Bible that did happen. Now, this one particular prophecy I'm about to share with you was satisfied so specifically that some false historians have claimed, oh, the book of Isaiah was written by more than one author, because they want to say that, oh, this part of the prophecy was written after the Medo-Persian Empire. They conquered Babylon. And so they want to pretend that this was not a prophecy because it was written 150 years before that happened. But this is actually prophesied 2 places in the Bible, and I'll show you both. Okay, so this is Isaiah 44, 24 to Isaiah 45. I'll read to verse 5. Thus saith the Lord, thy Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb. I am the Lord that maketh all things, that stretches forth the heavens alone, that spreadeth abroad the earth by myself, that frustrateth the tokens of the liars, and maketh diviners mad, that turneth wise men backward, and maketh their knowledge foolish, that confirmeth the word of his servant, and preserveth or performeth the counsel of his messengers, that saith to Jerusalem, thou shalt be inhabited, and to the cities of Judah, ye shall be built, and I will raise up the decayed places thereof, that saith to the deep, be dry, the deep being water. So he's saying he's going to dry up some water. And I will dry up thy rivers. Thus that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Cyrus was the name of the leader of the Medo-Persian Empire that conquered Babylon. The way they conquered Babylon is they redirected the water that was feeding the moat around Babylon and dried it up. This, 150 years earlier, said that the rivers would be dried up and Cyrus would conquer Babylon. It also says that he'll rebuild Jerusalem, which he also did, and you can read more about that in the book of Nehemiah. Isaiah 45. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the 2 leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I am the Lord, which call thee by thy name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. Cyrus did not know about this prophecy, and when he did this, I have heard in some accounts that actually Daniel, because Daniel was still alive when this happened, actually took a scroll of Isaiah to Cyrus, showed him this prophecy, and that is why he let them rebuild Jerusalem, because it scared the crap out of him when he saw his name in a prophecy that was written 150 years before it happened. And verse 5 says, I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. I girded thee, though thou hast not known me.
So your evidence is a prophecy written by a known fraud after the events that took place. If it has already happened, it is not a prophecy, it is history. We know there is a change in authors from chapter 39 onwards of this book due to a sudden change in writing style, narrative, and they also stop noting their name as the author. Noting these facts does not make a person a fake historian, and if that is how you deny evidence, then you are displaying confirmation bias, i.e., everything agrees with the Bible. Why? Because anything that disagrees with the Bible is false. It's also a form of circular reasoning in that sense. The Bible is true because it says it is true. Your prophecy was written after the event it supposedly prophesies. That's not going to be convincing. By the way, this has nothing to do with evolution, so maybe note that you've shifted to attacking non-believers.
Same prophecy, right before it happened, is documented in Daniel 5. The Babylonian ruler raids the Jewish temple and has a little party with the special vessels for the temple. And I'll just go read from Daniel 5:25 to 31. And this is the writing that was written. Actually, I'll explain that. So there's a handwriting happens on the wall, and it's in some weird language. And so the guy throwing the party gets Daniel to come interpret the words. So this is what it's talking about, the writing on the wall. And what was written? Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of mene. God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez, the kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, which is the name of the ruler that was throwing the party, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold around his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night was Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old.
Daniel makes a lot of errors in his book, too many for a person who was supposedly alive at the time, and no wonder. His writings come from around 200 BCE, 3 centuries after the supposed events prophesied. So how is this supposed to convince anyone? Supposed prophecies written after the events are not prophecies. I can only keep repeating this.
But to get to the real crux of why I'm making this video, Romans 1 puts it all to words. And what it says is that God put something in every one of us to know that there's a God. And if we openly reject him, he'll turn his back on us. And he'll turn us over to our sinful lives and allow us to become reprobates. And then we suffer the punishment for that. This is Romans 1. I'm going to read verse 18 through Romans 2:1. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. What that's saying is you have no excuse. God made everything so obviously created that you have to delude yourself to think it wasn't created. I gave the example of the owl's eyes. That's just one. There's tons of examples. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're self-deluded if you're trying to say that this all created itself. It didn't happen.
And yet still, that is where all the facts point towards. There is no evidence of a designer. None at all. Everything that has been traced back to its source has been found to have a natural origin with not a smidgen of creation involved. Lying about that fact is not an argument in itself. Your incredulity is just that, incredulity. Saying, I don't understand this, is not an valid excuse to conclude, therefore God. That's not how reality works. Also, ex-Christian, so I wasn't closed off to Christ, yet according to you, I lost my way. Tell me, doesn't losing one of your flock act to tarnish the reputation of any shepherd? What about a supposed all-powerful one?
Verse 21, because that, when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image like to corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things, that's snakes and things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanliness through their lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator. What do you think evolution is? It's exactly what evolution is. Who is blessed forever, amen. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. So it's saying, not only do people want to reject God so that they can do wicked things, but they also tend to have pleasure in other people who also do the same thing. But my point is, I care so much about people who are rejecting God that I want to tell them, you may think that you can go before God at the end of this life and make like you have some kind of excuse like, well, it wasn't obvious enough. And Romans 1 is saying you will not have an excuse. God will call you on the carpet and he will throw you in hell and you'll burn for all eternity. And I don't want to see that happen to anyone, which is why I made this video.
Well, I don't expect to go in front of your God as, hello, there's no evidence he exists. The fear of being tortured for a non-crime only works if you actually believe in the torturer. If someone were to go to me, stop breathing as the arse-eating praying mantis will devour your sphincter, I wouldn't stop breathing. I also wouldn't stop if they said, believe me, for the mantis says you have no excuse. If you don't have evidence when your supposed deity claims you do, all that does is make me question your deity even further, as now you're not only failing to prove their existence, but they're doing so when their believers claim they can. The bigger you make your deity, the greater the silence when they don't show up.
So the solution to this depraved state that we all find ourselves in as sinners is as follows. This is Romans 3. I'm going to start in verse 22. Even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon all that believe. For there is no difference, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We're all sinners. All of us deserve to go to hell. And Jesus is the solution. Verse 24, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God hath sent forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of God. To declare, I say, at this time, his righteousness, that he might be just, and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. So what that's saying is, God is a just God. He's patient. He's waiting for us to choose him. But eventually, our time's going to run out. Everybody dies. And everybody's going to be dead a lot longer than they lived. George Washington died a long time ago. He's been dead a lot longer than he lived. And he's going to be dead forever. The point being, we need to make that choice while we're alive. While we still have a chance.
So if your God is so compassionate, why does he not provide some actual evidence that he exists, rather than relying on scientifically illiterate camera wielders making a purely asserted video on his existence, based on the troubled grounds of ignorance and even fraud? Why not prove through a direct and measurable means? It honestly makes no sense, truly. So your challenge has been met and it has been found wanting on both fronts. Maybe just consider why this has happened and start questioning your own beliefs. So with that said, this is Essence 4. Take care and out.